Welcome back to another episode of Three Pete After Me. We're joined by another member of the 2024 RiverDogs pitching staff that's been so good this year. He was recently named Carolina League Pitcher of the Week. Went to 3 College World Series at Stanford. Today's guest is Drew Dowd. Drew, thanks so much for stopping by today. This has been a fun portion of the season for the RiverDogs, and you've obviously been a big part of that. But how different is it coming into a ballpark literally 6 days a week with the same group of guys when you're playing good baseball?
It makes a world of difference in terms of the vibe and just like the way things are before the games, after the games. But when you're winning, it's just a different culture. And I think that so far in the second half, there's been a lot more unitedness among the team. It's obviously tough when you have guys coming up and down throughout the year, so it's really tough to have a different group kind of every week, and we were dealing with that a lot in the start of the first half. And not saying that like right now we have a set in stone spot because people are coming up and down still, but I feel like we found a little bit of a groove, and I think guys are getting confident. Guys are leaning on each other too, and so I just like the trajectory that we have going right now.
Well, how different is it going from college baseball where everybody chose to be there, right? Like you had to decide to go to Stanford and play college baseball in your case, to here where you have 18-year-olds who signed when they were 16. You're meeting guys for the first time, maybe in spring training, maybe the day they show up to play. Does it take some time to kind of get to know everybody, personalities, who you can talk to on this day, who you can, and try to move forward as a team?
It's so different because in college, you'll meet everybody in the fall, and you have about 4 months of practicing with them, hanging out with them outside the field, everything like that until you actually play a game. Whereas here, you'll meet people and you're playing alongside them that day for the first time ever, and that's the first time you met them. And so it is a little bit different of a scenario, but you kind of get used to it after a while. But it sure does take a little bit of time for everyone to get settled when they come in. But I think what you alluded to about how it's so different when you have 18-year-olds that just got drafted out of high school. You also have 18 and 19-year-olds that are guys from Latin America that have been playing in professional baseball for a little bit, but it's really honestly their first time at this level. And then you also have guys like me that played in college for 3 years, and then you have other guys that are even older than me that either played 4 years in college or have played 5 years since then. So you have a big range, and I think that's been probably one of the tougher things because you have such a wide range of not only maturity levels but also language barriers. But I think as the season's gone on, everyone's come to realize that there's gonna be huge differences, but if we go to a common goal of winning and having a good time while doing it, it's all going to work itself out. So I think everyone's kind of relaxed out a little bit and done their part lately.
And I think to the credit of the Rays, that's kind of been the vibe the last 2 years. So last year, obviously you're not that familiar with it, but we were in last place in the first half, went on to obviously figure it out and achieve that end goal. This year, kind of the same story. But in all of those years, all those months that the team was under 500 or losing 3 walk-offs in a row like we did in Kinston this year, everybody had a positive attitude. Everybody said, we're going to turn it around. And part of that is knowing that the record resets in the second half, which is great.
Yeah.
I wish you could have that in every sport in every season. But I don't feel like there was ever a loss of confidence. And I remember you telling me early in the second half, like, we're going to turn this around and we'll be the second half dogs.
Yeah, I had no doubt about it. We're a young team, especially on the hitting side. There's a lot of young players that this is their first full season. And so there's just going to be adjustments that need to be made, and I think you're seeing it in the second half just in terms of at-bats, and even on the mound we have new guys as well. But I think everyone's kind of getting used to their roles now, especially out of the bullpen, and I think honestly everyone's just getting comfortable. And that's what sometimes it takes. It takes time in baseball sometimes, and also it takes time for confidence to grow. And I think you're seeing that right now. But like you said, it's fantastic that there's 2 parts of the season here because, it really is a story of 2 different teams right now. And I'm glad that it's able to come to fruition and we're able to play for a playoff spot now. You talked
about the language barrier just in day-to-day life. But talk about trying to be introduced to a new group of catchers. And you go from spring training when there's 10 to 15 catchers there. And then you go to an affiliate in here. We've had 3 or 4 or 5 cycle through this year from Sandy, who's up now. Brecker, you've got Delgado, Martinez. All those guys have been here and catch games, and you may be working to a different guy 3 weeks in a row. How important is it to get to know them, to go through those game plan meetings and pay attention and get to learn how the other guy likes to work?
Yeah, I think throughout the year I've gotten to know each one of them better and better, more and more I throw to them. Whether it just be talking to them in between innings, talking to them before the game, and sometimes it's also just understanding how they work as a player themselves, because there's a lot of communication that goes on between the pitcher and the catcher, and you kind of have to learn about how they work. I think obviously with the language barrier, it was tough at the start of the year for me because I'm someone with a lot of pitches. So with the pitch clock, you kind of got to go through it fast. And there was a few things that we needed to change in terms of the way that I got my signs in so that we weren't, pressing against the pitch clock. And sometimes when I need to make those adjustments in the middle of the game and I call, whether it be Delgado or Martinez out to the mound, like there's still significantly like a language barrier there, but they've both gotten so much better, and they both also now kind of understand what we're trying to do most of the time, and so it's gotten significantly better with all three of them, honestly, even with Brecker and stuff like that. So it's been honestly really good, and they learn quick, and if they didn't, honestly, it would show, but they've gotten a lot better. And honestly, now it's a pretty seamless process. But at the start of the year, for sure, it was new to me. It was new.
I believe that's got to be a tough one. And you have guys like Adrian Santana, Carlos Colmenares, who can come in and try and help solve that barrier. But you only have, 30 seconds out there as well. Yeah. So I can imagine it's a battle. You won Carolina League Pitcher of the Week a few weeks back. You think about the math, there's probably 140, 150 pitchers in the league. And so to be selected, you get, as a starter, one appearance that week, and you pitch well enough to catch somebody's attention in minor league baseball. Not that you're expecting that, but what was it like to get that note or to get that text that announced that you were the player of the week?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I think it goes to also like SMED for letting me go 7 innings because I bet there was a lot of guys that threw 6. I was able to throw 7 because like they trusted me to do that. So that was really cool. Honestly, like it's cool to get that notion, but I feel like it's better just to be winning, honestly, at this point. And also, I feel like every week, lately at least, I feel like we've had multiple outings in a week where some guy could have won pitcher of the week in terms of how well guys on our staff are pitching. So, honestly, it's just been one of those things where I feel like I'm not really competing against the league at this point. I'm just competing against the guys on our staff, and I think it's been a healthy competition because guys have been throwing really well. So, I feel like it was just an honor to win that for the team, but I also told, I think I told Garcia too, it's like, you could have won this if they just let you go one more inning too. So it's like, there's a lot of guys that are pitching really well right now.
You talk about that. How fun is it to watch knowing, okay, when you throw in a week, you get to sit back and watch Gary Gilhill, Anger Garcia, TJ Nichols, who didn't pitch for 3 weeks, comes back throwing 98.
Yep.
You have Santiago Suarez, who's throwing well. All these guys have been able to do their job. Trevor Harrison now, a new young pup who's in here and looks like he belongs. How much fun is it to just sit back and watch once your work is done in a series?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, and everyone's kind of got their own little style, too. It's not the same pudding, And so it's been really fun to watch. It's also been fun to watch guys get better, and sometimes guys also have little rough patches through the year. I've had rough patches, and then to see them come out of that and emerge out, like, for example, Gary, he had a really tough outing 2 weeks ago, and then earlier this week, 6 scoreless, easy stuff. So stuff like that's really fun to watch, and it's also fun because, during the games, all the bullpen guys are in the bullpen. So the only pitchers that are in the dugout during the games are the starters. So we have a little bit of like a camaraderie there where we're watching the games together and stuff like that. So we're all rooting each other on, and it's honestly just been fun to watch how well guys have been doing. And it honestly makes you feel like when you go out there, it gives you more confidence when you know that the 2 guys the nights before have absolutely shoved it down the other team's throat, I guess you could say. And then you're like, why don't I do it myself? So it's a cool little group we got going.
And there's a lot of guys you could say this about right now. You talked about the bullpen getting comfortable in their roles, but just one guy I wanted to talk about. When you start, you lay it all out there. The team has the lead. Let's say it's a close lead. And when Herlin Rosario comes into a game, in the press box, I go, okay, this feels like we're going to go in the right direction here. I just haven't seen that guy have a lot of bad outings. Do you have kind of the same feeling in the dugout when you see him start to warm up that, okay, we're going to be all right here?
Yeah. I mean, he's I think they call him the captain, I want to say, in the bullpen because he's just got a calm and cooling presence about him, and it's the same way on the mound when he's pitching in the game. It's just one of those things where no matter what scenario he's coming in to pitch in, it just seems like he's going out there and it's almost like he's throwing a bullpen, but he's making pitches, and I always have confidence in him, and honestly a lot of the other guys. But when you know he's coming in, it's most likely we're going to get the job done. So, yeah, it's always a good feeling when he's coming in after me.
Take you back to kind of the beginning of your baseball journey. Do you remember like being introduced to baseball? Was it always your first love, or what was your athletic background as a child?
I'd say it was hockey and baseball, which is weird considering I'm from California. But I was
big hockey state.
Yeah, it's huge there actually. But actually, the only one of the big reasons why I didn't keep playing hockey is because it's one of those sports where you got to keep on it year round, and it was kind of competing with baseball, and I was like, I live in California, man. Like I don't think I can be a year-round hockey player. So eventually it came to baseball. But I remember baseball started with me and my dad playing wiffle ball in the backyard. And that was like how I kind of got into it. And then I kind of just took off from there. And it's always been kind of my main sport throughout my upbringing. I mean, I played a lot of other stuff, but baseball was always kind of the thing I knew that I wanted to do the most. And yeah, it's been something that I've had a passion for throughout all of my life.
When did you stop playing hockey?
I stopped playing hockey at pretty young because I started at 4. And
all
then
right.
I stopped playing I think at like 9 or 10. But that was like it was really just those two sports. And then started playing like a lot more like football and basketball during those times. I even played like tennis too. I was like weirdly kind of a skilled tennis player without like practicing. It was fun, but like I was like I this isn't good for my baseball swing, so
No.
I stopped that.
Were you always a pitcher? I assume in some aspect, but I'm assuming you also, as you mentioned, talking about a swing, played other positions as well.
Yeah, so I was a pitcher. I mean, obviously as a left-hander,
right,
everyone's
like,
oh yeah, you got to get on the mound. But I played a lot of first base. But when I was younger, I was like the smallest kid on my team on like every team I was on, even into like high school. And so it was one of those things where like I was a good pitcher, but I really didn't have any power or anything like that. And like even playing first base, I remember my first baseman's mitt was like bigger than my head. Like it was like so big. I was just such a small kid, but I was pretty skilled. So like I remember being like, oh, I want to be a pitcher, but like, you know, usually when you're seeing left-handed pitchers, they're bigger guys. I was the smallest kid on the field, and it kind of took until like the middle of high school for me to hit a growth spurt to like really realize my full potential on the mound.
So was it about that time that you became sort of a pitching prospect, that you could go to a Pac-12 school or something like that? Or when did you kind of take that step where you were like, okay, I can play big-time college baseball?
Yeah, I'd say it was then, because my freshman year of high school, I think I was like only like 5'5" or something like that, and I was still shoving. Like I was doing really well for freshman baseball, but like I wasn't throwing hard enough and all that. And so like I was kind of looking at maybe like going to D2s or maybe JUCO, stuff like that, all those early on. And then by the time like the start of my junior year, I was like 6'1" and I was like 175. So I was just a string bean now. But I was throwing a lot harder, and then that's kind of when a lot of teams started coming on the scene. And I remember I kind of recruiting was fun. It was a lot, but it really came down between TCU and Stanford, and eventually I chose Stanford, and I haven't regretted it ever since.
Both pretty good options. So you couldn't have really gone wrong there either way.
Yeah.
Stanford, you go there, and is it as intense as you would imagine it would be with the level of academics there, plus the high level of athletics that you're playing?
Yeah, it's a lot. You really have to be good at time managing. Honestly, it's kind of like something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, because it was so tough to do there that it's like, even here, I'm like, wow, I have so much time on my hands when I'm away from baseball. So it is tough, but when you're doing it with a bunch of other guys that have the same sort of aspirations as you to play professional baseball, but also get like a really high level of education, it's a lot easier to do because, you know, you're constantly surrounded by people with good habits, that have the same drive as you, that aren't doing stupid things that are going to take them off course. So that really helped a lot. But you also see there's also some guys that, you know, finagle their way around the system and stuff like that, just like any job or any group of people you go to. But then there's also some other guys that I still marvel at how hard they worked in the classroom, and still how hard they worked in onto the field. So you meet a lot of really driven people, which I think I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
You were able to be part of an unprecedented level of success there, going to Omaha pretty much on a regular basis. So what was that like, just doing it once but then doing it again and again?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a dream because I actually went to Omaha as a fan when I was younger with some of my friends. And so, like, I was just big on, like, oh, this would be really cool if I could one day play here. But to go 3 times was unbelievable, and it was honestly kind of just surreal that we were able to do that. But I feel like looking back on it, it was great the journey there. We didn't have much success there, and that was kind of frustrating. But at the same time, I don't think there's many people in college baseball that can say they went 3 times in a row. And the class that I went with was a really special class, and I think that class will help Stanford baseball grow even in the future just because of the success we had those 3 years.
You talk about Stanford baseball growing. Obviously, it's going to be different for them now. Are you glad that your last year was before they had to go to the East Coast every other week?
Ooh, yeah.
That seems like a tough way to go about for the other sports besides football.
Yeah, it is. I was really upset about that for the other sports because I get that football is a big money-making sport, and I get that they're the ones driving this, but I think that it should have been a football-only move because when you look at the landscape of college sports, a lot of sports don't have the money to be traveling across the country. They also have way worse schedules than football in terms of they're traveling twice as much as football in terms of how many games they got to play on the road. So it really just doesn't make as much sense for me. It's unfortunate that they had to cut up the Pac-12 as well because the Pac-12 is a pretty awesome conference that has so many rivalries that goes back so many years. And it's unfortunate that, like, Stanford's not going to be able to play UCLA or USC or the Arizonas or even Oregon and Washington. Like, all those schools, it's just they're such classic matchups, and it's sad to see that going away. Obviously, it's a new beginning, and it could be cool, them joining the ACC, but pretty bitter about how that turned out for Stanford and the Pac-12.
On the good news for baseball, I saw they added scholarships now. And baseball, I don't know how many people know, for a long time it was they didn't have the coaching staff, the funds available, that not all those guys were being paid in the full-time roles. Then it was partial scholarships and those kind of things that I don't think people realize. Football players, for the most part, 85 of them are on scholarship. Now baseball added a handful. How big do you think that is for the growth of college baseball, which I think has kind of taken off here over the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's one of those things that it'll kind of fight with NIL because it kind of levels the playing field a little bit because scholarships I think are easier for schools to get than technically asking for people to like pay for kids to get them recruited there. So I think that's a good thing, and I also like knowing guys that even went to Stanford that had great careers there and had to pay a lot of their way through school because the team just didn't have enough money to pay them. Like we only had 11.7 scholarships. So it's great to see that that's expanding a little bit. And also the coaches too, because the coaches work so hard. A lot of them with recruiting, and the guys that don't get paid, they do camps on the side just so that they can have some money for just living, especially in an area like Stanford. It's so expensive to live. So I'm just glad all that stuff's coming to fruition because also college baseball is growing in terms of how much money it's making. So just like football's booming, obviously on a way different scale. If they're making more money, then people should be compensated for it. So I'm glad that's happening.
You talked about the Pac-12 and the good rivalries there, the teams you played. So what's it like to be teammates with T.J. Nichols? Chandler Murphy was at Arizona. Obviously, he ended up at Missouri. Owen Stevenson at Arizona State. I'm sure I'm missing a few guys, but what's it like to play against them? Not that you ever faced them because they're pitchers, but now being in the clubhouse together.
Yeah, I knew of all of them before just because we played against each other for so long, but it's great, and they're all great dudes. Something about the West Coast, I feel like a lot of us just have a good, we know a lot of people out there, and so it's been cool. And also both of those guys that you just, not Chandler, but the other two you just mentioned are Northern California guys. So it's really small world there, but it's good to talk about stuff like that. And even Riku Nishida, who we're playing this week, I know Riku, I played against him for years, even before he was at Oregon. And so seeing guys like that over here that I played against in college, it's pretty cool, and it says something about how good the Pac-12 was And it's unfortunate it's coming to an end, but a lot of great players out of there, and it's also good to see familiar faces that you've seen on a baseball field for a while. So
I was actually going to bring him up at the time of this interview, playing Kannapolis, and you're going to start tomorrow. But how annoying, and this is a compliment to him, but how annoying is it to see Riku Nishida in the other lineup?
Yeah,
he just feels like an annoying guy to face.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, you tell the coaches you don't want to hit tomorrow, because he's so committed to his process. I've seen him since after my freshman year of college. I played him in summer ball in the West Coast League, and then the year after I played him in the Cape, and then my junior year I played him at Oregon. And he's always been the same way. It's just he's going to get in the box, and he is not going to strike out, and he's going to put the ball in play, and he's going to find a way to do it that's going to give him the best chance to get on base. And he is so committed to his process, and I respect him for that. That's why I really like Riku, and he plays the game hard, and he's a great defender. So he controls the controllables, which I think is something that is such a simple thing in this game, but I think it's overlooked at this level because of how much there's metrics,
right.
like what you're like. But he controls what he controls, and he's a solid baseball player, and he's a winner. And so I respect him a lot.
So that's a guy that, and a couple of guys you played against, but what's it like when you look across the field and see Drew Bowser over there, or somebody that you played baseball with?
Yeah, it's been cool seeing him, and I would have a few other teammates, but they're hurt in this league. And honestly, it's just it's weird because you're so used to pulling for them, and then you see them on the other side, and it's one of those things where I always tell them like, hey, like I when you're playing other places, like I hope you're doing great, but when I see you here, yeah, I'm not really looking forward to seeing a Drew Bowser home run, but it's honestly just good to see them and catch up, see them playing baseball on the field. And I think that's the best part of it, just being able to see them play again, because a lot of them are just a pleasure to watch. So, yeah.
Another guy that you would have played with at Stanford that we got to know a little bit was Brock Jones, drafted in 2022. He came here for the end of the year, and adding him to the lineup certainly pushed the RiverDogs toward their second championship in a row here. I know he played football a little bit there for a while at safety, an outfielder that had a great amount of hitting numbers and stats that way. What was he like in college?
Yeah, Brock was just, talk about a good locker room guy. He just, he had a way of commanding a space among the guys just because he's someone that people respect. And as if you don't know Brock, you might have some certain things about him that you say, oh, that guy's, he's all about himself and stuff like that, which it's completely the opposite. He's one of the most humble guys I know, and he really cares about other people. And so he was one of those guys at Stanford that you just really wanted to play for everyone else on the team because you knew he cared about you. He, had a vested interest in how you were doing, not only on the field but off it. So, just aside from baseball, he's a great baseball player. But as a person, I think Brock's an A1 person, and that's why I would always want to be a teammate with him. And obviously he's doing his thing in BG, but hopefully we can be teammates again one day.
When did you realize, we talked about when you realized you would be a college player perhaps, when did you realize getting drafted and hopefully being drafted high was a realistic possibility for you?
Yeah. Well, I'd say before the year when I was getting interviewed by a lot of different teams, I was like, oh yeah, this could be a possibility, but a lot of people get interviewed and stuff like that. And then I actually had a really bad start to my junior year, and it just wasn't looking good. And so honestly, the draft for me, because I was a guy that I needed to be compensated for me to come because I was totally cool with going back. And so I was like, all right, I don't think a team's gonna really want me that bad. So I kind of just put that out of my sights, and then the second half of the season I came out of the bullpen, and things kind of just clicked for me in terms of how I was doing on the mound, my stuff, and I really just came into my own. And then suddenly I looked up and it was like, I think there's no way I'm not going to be able to go to the draft in terms of what teams are offering me and stuff like that. So that's kind of when there was a new realization, but it probably almost took me a little bit to realize hey, don't worry about the draft, for it to work out.
Well, baseball is such a tough sport that way because you get drafted right after your season if you go as far as you hope to, and you did.
Yeah.
That you're all focused on trying to win a championship. Now you're part of another organization and you've got to go there. And I've talked to every pitcher, I think, that's been drafted by the Rays has been ecstatic that they were drafted by the Rays. Was that the same thing for you, and how has that lived up to reality?
100%. Yeah, the Rays have a great pitching development program, and everyone knows that. And so I was fired up to go to the Rays because I also knew that like I wasn't a finished product in terms of what I come out of college. I knew that I was gonna need time to develop. So I think it's been great, and there's so many resources here, and the coaches, the coordinators, everyone is really looking for you to reach your potential. And I think the Rays as an organization know that the minor leagues is so important for them because it's their model, honestly. They're not a big market team. They're not going to be able to sign really big guys from other teams. What they need to do is develop guys in the minor leagues. Potentially, if they don't make it to the major leagues, you got to trade them off. But they need to build their minor league up so that they can get the best out of their 3 years when you get up there, and hopefully they can push out a championship with a low payroll. So I get that why they do it, and now being a part of it, it's like it's the real deal. So I love it, and it's a good spot.
You mentioned you throw earlier on that you throw a lot of pitches, and so it takes some conversation with the catcher, and you have to be a little bit more efficient. Try to take me back through. Let's start with your fastball. Like, have you made big changes to it over your life, or is it just a fastball that I've always thrown it this way, or how did that pitch come to be what it is now?
Yeah, it's kind of taken some I used to throw a two seam when I was younger, and then I threw like a cutter as well, and then I kind of just stuck to a four seam in high school, and that's what I entered Stanford with. And it was kind of one of those pitches that I thought was always it needed to be better than it was. And I think at the end of last year, it really became what it could have been for a while in terms of the way it moved and how hard it was. And this year, I feel like it's honestly taken a little bit of a step back, but it's one of those things that I think is a pitch that I want to have more consistency with, and it's honestly the pitch that I've been working on the most here. But I think that what I want it to do is I want it to ride. I want it to ride a lot. And but honestly, I think it's still a pitch that I have really good command of and that I have confidence in. So that's what matters. But it's kind of been all over the map throughout my baseball career. And maybe that's a good thing because I've tried out a lot of things, but maybe it could be a bad thing because I haven't honed in on my craft. But yeah.
So if you said that's a pitch you've always been working on and kind of try to pinpoint, what would you say has been the pitch you've been confident in the most over the course of your career?
I'd say my curveball, just because it's such a different pitch than I think a lot of people see nowadays. A lot of people are just throwing hard sliders, and they're short, and I kind of have a bigger breaking ball, but it's sharp. And so I've always had kind of confidence in throwing that for a strike and a ball, and it's kind of been an outlier pitch always. It's been a consistent one. Like, I love throwing my changeup too, but again, the changeup always hasn't really been too centered in the repertoire. So I'd say definitely my curveball. Like, actually, I had someone sent me a thing where it was like after an outing, it was like it was one of those things, keep calm and throw a curveball, and that's kind of my motto.
That's what you live by.
Yeah, whenever the shit hits the fan, I'm going, or I don't know if I can say.
Oh, you're fine.
I just throw a curveball.
And what is maybe a pitch that you're working on the most, or that you've kind of the newest to your arsenal that you feel like could have some growth?
Yeah, I think my slider, I didn't really throw a slider that much in college, and then they taught me what to raise. And so I've been throwing that, and it's kind of been a work in progress. At times it's been more of a cutter, at times it's been sweepy. So I'm kind of working on that, and I think it's still at a stage where it's like it can be so much better, and it's still honestly has not bad results in the game. So I'm looking forward to developing that a little bit more.
What's it like to try and learn a pitch against professional hitters? Like you said, you didn't throw it when you signed with the Rays.
Yeah.
They're trying to teach you something, and you're trying to do it against guys who are really good at hitting it. So how is that mental process and then physically trying to work on the pitch?
I don't love it, honestly, just because I want to go out there and compete. I don't want to think about anything else besides competing. And so when you're having to make adjustments that aren't really about competing, I don't love that, but it's a part of it. Here it's not always about how many guys you can strike out or how many innings you can go. It's about getting better, honestly. And that's something that I've learned throughout this year is that I've been such a result-oriented guy going in college and playing for a program that it was all about winning. And now it's like you want to win, and that's still a huge priority, but it's also about over time seeing growth in your pitches. And so I kind of had to learn that, and I think now I kind of understand that more. Pitching against guys and having to learn new pitches, you kind of just have to go with it, make adjustments, and compete, but also reel it back in and be like, all right, this is what I said I was going to do. This is what I said I was going to make an adjustment on,
Talking about making adjustments, you've had a great year, no doubt about it. But your first at bat as a pitcher for the RiverDogs, I remember talking to you about this in April. It was a home run in Fayetteville, and you're like, okay, this is a little bit different maybe, and then retired every batter after that. But what was that moment like when the first guy puts good wood on a baseball, and you're like, okay, here I am?
Actually, like, it's weird to say. Like, he hit a home run, and like it was on like a 3-2 pitch, and I was like, you know what, good, because like if anything was to wake me up to me needing to be better, it was that. And obviously, it wasn't good that I gave up Andrew Lindsay's run that was on first base,
right?
And I wasn't happy about that, and I wouldn't actually say good in my head, but it was one of those things that I feel like I kind of reset the page right then and there and was like, all right, like, that just happened, and we're not going to let it happen again. And yeah, that's kind of just whatever went through my head right then and there. And I was also like, shit, like, are guys just like way better than college right now? Like, and then I figured out, no, it's the same game. It's fine.
Yeah, you just have to make your pitches, and every once in a while that's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Is it true that you can sometimes learn more from an outing where nothing goes your way and you feel like you maybe can't find something but you battle than it is to go out and maybe throw 6 perfect innings?
100%. I think like this last outing that I threw in Kannapolis, I went 3 2/3, and I had like 80 pitches. Like, just not a good, like, I only gave up 1 run though. And that was one thing where it was like, all right, like, you learn from that and you say, all right, it's great that I battled and I minimized because I clearly didn't have great stuff. But you can learn so much more from why that happened than if you watch yourself do great for 6 innings and kind of go, all right, like, I made a good pitch there. I got lucky there. I got out of a jam here. And, like, you can see what you're doing well, but honestly, these outings are the ones that I look at more in terms of the ones I just had, because those are the ones you can realize mid-game, hey, I've seen this before. Like, I've seen the trend I'm going towards right now, and I can fix it. So I'm not throwing 80 pitches in 3 2/3, you know? So I think, to answer your question, yes, you can learn a lot from those.
I think I heard, and I want to know if this is true to you, and I think it probably is. I heard a former big league pitcher talking during a major league game that he says when somebody has a bad outing on the mound, the thing that everybody says is, oh, he didn't have his stuff that day. And he said, well, that's not necessarily true, because when you get to professional baseball, you might have the same stuff every game. Some days they don't chase it. You're throwing good pitches it's good stuff, but for whatever reason, they're taking pitches that they would normally swing at. Do you feel the same way that, it's not always that you threw the ball bad, but maybe another team just had a day where they didn't swing at anything that you were trying to get them to chase, and they squared up everything in the zone?
I would say that's the pitcher's favorite excuse. I didn't have my stuff. Because sometimes it is true. Sometimes, like, a pitch will just not be coming off your hands right that day, and it's like that legitimately was a worse pitch than it usually is. But I would say most of the time it is not that way. Most of the time it is you're throwing the same stuff, you have the same movement profile, but for whatever reason you're just not syncing it up correctly. Guys are making takes, and, like, also, you forget that these teams, especially when you're a starter, they have different scouting reports. Some teams will tell them certain things, and I can see it too with the way they react. And so sometimes the scouting report's just right on, and sometimes you attack guys differently. So I think there's so much more than goes into it, and I think only a small percentage of the time is it actually the stuff being different. I think you can chalk so many different things up to why stuff goes the wrong way, and only a little bit of it has to do with the stuff.
I would imagine pitching at the Joe is nice. You get that breeze blowing in. It's a bigger ballpark. Where is a place on the road you've enjoyed pitching or watching games from the dugout?
I would say, pitching, I'd say Augusta. That is the only thing I like about Augusta, Georgia. I will say that on camera. I don't like Augusta, Georgia. I don't have any plans of going back. But that place, just because, I don't know, it's a bigger park, and I like pitching there. It's even though it's hot and I don't do well in the heat, I like the mound and, like, the background. Sometimes it's as simple as that for a pitcher, is how, like, the background look. Because at Stanford, we had a really far backstop, so it felt like you were throwing to an island at the hitter, and then you had to get used to that, for sure.
I believe it.
But at a place like that, or even down east, it was, like, really close. But I just like throwing Augusta. But overall, like, going to a spot, Columbia wasn't bad. I liked Columbia. It's a nice little spot. But Myrtle Beach wasn't bad either. The fans get into it there, which I actually kind of enjoy, especially when you're beating them, like.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun when, like, they're, like, talking smack to you behind the dugout, and then, like, we put a 3 spot up. It's like, oh, like, where's the talking now, bud?
Right.
But, yeah, those are probably the spots. The rest of them, they're nice stadiums, but it's all the same.
Who do you enjoy watching pitch on the RiverDogs roster?
Oh, that's, like, such a tough question. I would say that, man.
You can name a few.
Yeah, I would say, like,
not all 15, I guess.
Yeah,
we don't have time for that.
Yeah, I mean, one guy that's coming to mind right now is Alberto
Alexander Alberto.
Alexander Alberto. He is unbelievable with the pitches he throws. Stuff I've never seen before. And then I'd also go with Gary Gilhill just because he's funny to watch on the mound in terms of his mannerisms and, like, he's just. I always say, like, we need to hold him down with cylinder box. He's going to fly with the wind because the way he walks and the way he just moves. But those two guys are just interesting guys. But honestly, it's a fun time watching the pitchers on a team. Like, I could name 4 or 5 more and have really good reasons why I love watching the pitch.
Is there a guy in terms of a hitter on the RiverDogs that you'd love to face? And obviously, you may have faced some of them in spring training. But is there somebody you think would give you a pretty good battle that you'd like to match wits with at the plate?
Yeah, I think Santana. Just because Santana, I feel like he has a really good approach, and I think he really makes it a thing not to try to strike out, and I just love to see how he'd, like, face my curveball. Like, I just want to throw him some curveballs and see what he'd do to it.
Who do you think the funniest guy in the RiverDogs clubhouse is?
Oh man, I would say Dalton Fowler's pretty funny, but I'd also say we got, like. I'd say Boucher is not here anymore, but I got a kick out of Boucher. He was really funny. And then I'd also say Radelis Martinez is hilarious as well. Even though he doesn't speak that much English, the stuff that I can understand is really funny.
And he may be the same answer, but I've asked, if you were on a different team and bench is cleared, who are you avoiding in our clubhouse?
Probably Angel Mateo because,
that's a good bet.
Yeah, that guy is just he's huge. And I also don't know what he's thinking a lot of the time, so I just wouldn't want to get near him.
All right, Stanford guys are smart, right? Would you
that's
win
what
trivia? Would you win a trivia contest in the clubhouse, or who are you afraid might give you a run there?
I think that the only person that could potentially give me a run for my money is either Brian Brecker or Noah Myers, but I still think I would win.
And they're roommates on the road, so they might be studying together. Yeah. Although I've heard them talk sometimes, and I'm not sure that they would beat you either.
But I feel like that Myers has definitely some just weird knowledge.
He just has knowledge.
Yeah, he's weird. He's an old guy.
But he's not, like, you wouldn't call him intelligent, right?
No.
Yeah,
no,
we're not going to go that far.
We're not going to go that far at all. I'm not going to give him that much credit. I would say Brian's definitely more of an intellect, but Brian doesn't have the experience that Noah does. So there's a little bit of give and take there with those two.
All right, so we're going to test your knowledge just real quickly of the answer to these is a member of the RiverDogs' current pitching staff.
Okay.
So you can tell me which player, his family owns a chicken restaurant in the Dominican.
Oh. I'm going to go with Samuel Mejia.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, because they call him chicken in Spanish.
Yeah, Pica Pollo, I think, is his nickname.
So I picked up on that, and I started to realize why they call certain people certain things.
Has he treated the team to a meal from the restaurant? I mean, that's probably tough transportation-wise.
I think there'd be some serious refrigeration problems there.
I don't know if I'd eat a chicken tender that arrived here 3 days later.
But he hasn't. But I bet he could cook a mean chicken. So I don't know.
That's true.
I got to talk to him about that.
All right, who was named their conference's pitcher of the year last year?
That would be Dalton Fowler in the AAC, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
With Memphis.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I've seen him out of the bullpen, and he's nasty. I would not want to see that guy for 6 or 7 innings when he's going well.
Yeah, no. When he's going and he has that fastball going, like, it's good luck. I mean, especially college hitters, like, they have a tough time hitting him up here. So I can see why he got pitcher of the year over there.
Which starting pitcher started Game 3 of the championship series last year? This might be not of the championship. Sorry, of the first round. This is actually
could be one of two people, and I'm gonna go with because I think one of them was hurt during this time. So I think I'm gonna go with Santiago Suarez?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Gary got hurt towards the end of the year. Yeah. Okay. Because I know they both of them were up here.
And a little side note, though, for both Gary and Santiago being 19 years old, they don't really show it on the mound or really as people either. They're very business-oriented and they get their job done. How impressive is that?
Yeah, I would say Gary is very impressive. I always told him that, maybe I'm glad you're here, but, you definitely could have fit in at Wake Forest. You're a smart kid. And so I hope that he eventually goes back and because he's really smart. And honestly, him and Santana being here the whole year as high school guys, I mean, Gary's a year older than Santana, but they're really mature. And honestly, it's been really good to have them on the team because even with the younger guys that are around them as well, they're, I think, a good role model and example for them.
And then last one, who was voted as their state's top 50 basketball players in this decade?
Wow.
In the decade. That's impressive.
And this is a current player.
This is a current RiverDogs pitcher.
Oof. I'm going to go with Cade Halamano.
That's a great guess.
Yeah.
But it's a little unfair of a question. He's only been here for a few days, if that helps.
Oh, is it Garrett Edwards?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
He was voted top 50 in the decade in baseball and basketball in Louisiana.
Wow. I did not know that. I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, he said
very modest for
he
not
still
bringing
wants
that
to shoot a little bit. He said he was a shooter.
Yeah.
And he thought he was going to play higher level basketball. So,
wow.
Yeah. So don't challenge him to a game of horse if anything's on the line.
Yeah.
Go with somebody else.
Seriously, I'll have to bring that up with him. That's impressive. That's really impressive.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun catching up with you, learning a little bit more about what brought you to this point in your career. Best of luck the rest of the way. Hopefully a few more Carolina League Pitcher of the Weeks, and in the end, hopefully a trip to the playoffs again. But thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good stuff from Drew Dowd. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Repeat After Me. Give the RiverDogs a follow at Chaz RiverDogs on Instagram, Facebook, and X. If you have any suggestions on who you'd like to hear from in the near future, please let us know there as well. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.